Hey gang, Joyce with Skipping Calves Farms here. I want to try, I don't have a tripod or anything that works right now, and the case on my camera has already gotten all torn up by trying to put one of those holder things on it. I don't want to risk doing that, but what I do want to do is I want to show you how to take a piece of wire like this and turn it into a coil like this in just a couple of minutes, and then how to take a coil like this and use it to make a 360-degree hinge. Or have you ever had a hose that kinked on you? You know, like where the wand attaches to the hose, right there at that connection. You know how it gets weak, right? Or if you have a place in your hose where it's kinked before and it always tends to kink, let me show you how to fix that. So basically what you need is, this is just a short scrap piece of wire for example purposes. This piece of wire, I found that the minimum number of loops you really want to have, minimum number of loops, is 9. The diameter of the loop is dependent upon what you use as your support medium. So as you can see, I use this little piece of 1/2-inch conduit to do my wrap. Well, how did you do it? Well, first of all, it was a straight wire. I came with these vice grips, grabbed it down, grabbed it along the edge or the side of the vice grip, like that, clamped it down real tight, and then proceeded to wrap it. And I'll show you that with this little testy piece. And then you wrap it as far as you can, which I didn't try to do it with a pair of pliers or anything. I might do that to finish it off, to make that curved, but this is just your basic application, because you can nuance it. You can play around with it and get it to do what you want it to do. But the principles are what I'm trying to show, and that is, you want to get a flexible wire. Now, I learned about the 9.5 gauge aluminum wire from Joel Salatin. He uses it for making his insulator connections on his fencing. So that's how I came by this. This was just a scrap piece. So let me see if I can get this off without too much ado. There we go. And then we'll slide that off and set that back over here. Set that back over here. So, well, Joyce, what do you actually do? Let's see if we can take it for a little test drive. Now we're going to do that with this piece of rebar. Rebar is not a bad thing to wrap around. What you need to determine is what is the size and the use of what you're making the coil out of. Now I'm going to use this on a 3/4 inch garden hose, and so I wanted a little bit bigger coil. But essentially it's pretty simple and straightforward. If I had 3 hands it'd be a little bit easier, but I don't, so we'll do the best we can with what we got. So as I kind of tried to describe before, you want to get the wire and the rebar in the grips of your vice grip on just the edge I need to tighten that down a little bit more. Just on the edge of the vice grip here, so you can, that's why these first two coils are sprung a little bit, because you have to go around the teeth the first time. So the closer you can get that, the more even your coil's going to become. And so let's see if we can get up. Oh, still need to tighten it down a little more. And let's see here. Nope, it's just maybe another half turn. There we go. I usually like to try and work with the natural curve of the wire as it comes off the reel. Why? Why fight it? So as you should be able to see, that wire is right along the edge. It's actually coming out at a slight angle, and it's attached and gripped up here. Now what? And I'm going to put a glove on. Why? Because I'm a wimp, and I don't like messing with my hands, risking cutting my hands or getting injured. So this is what it looks like from this direction. Okay? So you can see how that's coming out at just a slight angle, and it's not rocket science. Basically, you're pulling on the wire, and you're bringing it in a loop as close around as you can. Like that. And normally, what I'll do is I'll get it started like this. And then what you can do is just hold the wire with your hand or your thumb, trying to make it so you can still see. And then just guide the wire so it coils next to each other. And essentially, you just turn the rebar, or whatever you're using as your wraparound. And I'm doing it slower than I normally would, to kind of let you see. And you want to try and get as close a wrap as you can. Now, like, this is a really short piece of wire, so you're not going to be able to get but a couple of wraps. And you can see why that first wrap is always going to have a gap, because there's just no way to get it back really that close. But is it that easy? Well, it is that simple. Sometimes if you're like me and you're not working with the best quality tools, or you don't have a clamp that you need or whatever, even though it's real simple, you kind of have to finagle it, as my mom used to say. So I got this wrapped on here real tight, and because it's rebar, it doesn't like to come off real easy. So I'm not going to try and pull that off. That's another reason why a lot of mine, I'll do it around. My two favorite wraparounds are this 1/2-inch conduit, and I have somewhere around, but I couldn't find it real quick, so I grabbed this rebar instead. I have an old tire iron, just a single tire iron. It's just about, I think this is a number 4 rebar, which means it's about 1/2 inch. Maybe it's a number 3, I'm not sure. But, so the smaller the thing you're going to want to make a coil around, the smaller the thing you're going to want to create the coil around. And a little bit of that is going to be your own decision-making process and testing to see what works best for you and how you're going to use it. Now I'm going to put you on pause for a moment, and then let's see if I can show you here in a minute take this over, stretch it out, and attach it in the manner in which I plan to use it. So let me put you on hold for a moment. Okay, gang, I've got this bone propped up on a Pyrex pie pan and a watering can, up against the watering can. I sure hope I can get it figured out so you can see what I'm trying to show you. If not, well, I tried. Okay, now I'm going to show you a second instance where I used something similar to this on the other end of this garden hose as it connects to the faucet. Now, this is not quite as heavy duty as the hose that connects at the other end. This is 5/8 and the other is 3/4, and this gets turned like this a lot. And so I want to take some of that stress off of here because I'd like this garden hose to last as long as I can get it to last. So how am I going to get this thing on this thing? So the first thing that you do is you stretch it apart. I'm going to try and do this with my fingers. I sure hope you can see what I'm trying to show you. But most of the time I don't have the hand strength, which I don't have here. So I'm going to reach over here and grab my vice grips and let the vice grip grab one end of it, and then I'm going to pull it out with my hand like that. And essentially I wanted to start with the curved end, and I'll show you why. And then you put it on by spreading these coils out, and then you start by wrapping it around, and you just kind of have to play with it and get it to do a wrap or two. And I'm going to have to do that with the pliers, but like that. And so that's how you wrap it around the hose. Now I did this one pretty tight on purpose. And what I'm going to do now is grab these needle nose pliers and see if I can't get this to come around and come down and grab a hold. That's why I left it so tight. You can see where it scratched the brass there, but by leaving that tip bent down, that's going to be able to grab the metal fitting. And then you just keep wrapping it around. I'm going to put you on hold. Well, no, I'm afraid if I put it on hold, I'll knock the phone down and you'll never see it again. So you kind of work your way around and you kind of do a bit of it by feel. And like I said, I did this coil a lot tighter. Now, if you don't want it to do what I want it to do here, if you want it to just hold in place, but not necessarily keep it from bending so much, you don't have to make it quite so tight. And I'm working my way around now. It's not going to be as fancy and pretty as the store-bought ones. One of the reasons I usually choose to work with the aluminum is twofold. It doesn't easily corrode in water quite like steel does. I need to put my gloves on here. And it's a little bit softer metal, so it's a little bit more flexible. It's not quite as elastic. It doesn't always bounce back or spring back like steel does, but you can manipulate it a little bit more to start with, which is something I kind of prefer. And part of that is, like I said, I just don't have the hand strength. And so you can work with the details that you've got to make it do what you're comfortable with. And then a lot of times towards the end, depending upon what I'm working with, now if I'm working with something small, I can use my fence tools to give me a smooth edge. And if I'm working with something bigger like this, sometimes I can work with this tool. These are just some cheap fence pliers or lineman pliers. In this case, I'm not going to be able to really do either one of those. So I'm going to try and take my needle nose and see if I can get that to clamp down. There we go. And I don't really want it to wrap too tight. I just want to get a kink at the end. See how I'm getting a kink at the end there? And I gotta make sure I don't get too much of an angle because I don't want it to dig into the hose on one end. On the other end, I don't want it to be sticking out and scratching. So since I don't always have fancy dancy tools, I just try to figure out a way to make whatever it is that I have work. And so having a little bit softer wire sometimes works well for me. See, that's not going to cut into it. And so now when I do this, it gives me like a gentle curve. It doesn't put all the stress right here on the hose. And you can kind of twist it, you can tighten it, you can loosen it, you can stretch it, whatever kind of works for your use. You can kind of monitor it. But let me show you what I did at the other end of this garden hose. Whoops. Oh, there's my glove. Okay, here we go. Let me put you on hold and I'll walk on over there. Okay, gang, let me show you what I've got here. This is the 3/4 inch contractor grade red hose that's hooking up to my Plasson Quick Connect water line that runs above ground using HDPE up to the water meter by the street. That's the only water I have access to. Okay, but as you can see, I've also got a Boogie Blue carbon filter, and I've got a second garden hose and a Y on here, because this is basically my only current connection. So I've done a couple of things. Number one, what was happening when I needed to reorient this like this, the springy thingy that came with the garden hose was too short. So I took a piece of my aluminum wire and I made it longer to take the stress, because otherwise you would have just had a single point of stress here and it would have kinked. So now I've stretched that over another 6 or 8 inches. Another thing that I did was, and in this case I used steel wire, this Flexzilla, and I like the Flexzilla hose and I don't. I know there are some grazing people that brag on it. I'll tell you, what they like about it is good about it. When you got water in that hose, it's not going, it expands and it's not going to kink. The challenge is this hose is not designed to carry potable water. And when it expands, what I discovered, because I use, the only way I can get potable water is from a garden hose like this into a jug. So when I first started using the Flexzilla, and still when I use it, it's still, when you first turn it on and it expands, a bunch of little microplastic pieces come out of the hose. Yeah. Little tiny snow. It looks like dandruff, right? And how do I know this for sure? Well, number one, all of my water gets filtered onto a Berkey charcoal filter. And the filters were covered with this white stuff and had never been before I started using this hose. I still use this hose. I still use it for filling my water jugs. But I have discovered that if I turn the pressure on and turn it off and on and off and on about 10 times to let a gallon or so of water out, or maybe not quite that much, it flushes all of that first dandruff, that first batch of plastic that's like dandruff off of the hose. It flushes it out and doesn't go into my water jugs. So the flex hose is attached to the Boogie Blue, and it's sitting on top of a piece of sheet metal. Well, there is no water pressure in this hose at this time. You can see that it's very, very flexible. But if I didn't have this coil on here, it would kink. It would kink because there's no water pressure on there. Now, as soon as the water filled up, it's fine. But I didn't want it sitting there on the edge of the metal. And so the bottom edge of this coil is protecting the bottom edge of the garden hose as it cuts across there like that and comes on around. So those are 2 other instances where I've used it on garden hose. And it's really a pretty cool little technique. I don't have it real refined or real polished. Somebody who has better tools, a better imagination, or more mechanically inclined, can do just that. But that's the thought process. That's the basic techniques. Those are the basic, simple tools. Why do I talk about this kind of stuff? Well, I'm here on a little farmstead. And guess what? Farming isn't getting easier. What did they, quote I heard somebody attribute to JFK? He said, farmers are the only business people who buy everything retail, sell everything wholesale, and pay for the shipping both ways. And makes it hard to make a profit, makes it hard to stay on the land. And gang, I tell you what, I spent most of my life in the city. There is nothing like living on the land. And so with that, I'll go ahead and let you go. You may want to go back and look through and see what you see. And if you just get that idea, that one concept, and you can use it in a different way. I also used it to make hinges for putting my sheepfold together, and I did a video on that a long time ago. So with that, gang, I will wish you, sheep are coming over here because they hear me talking to you, and this is the area where I oftentimes would feed them supplemental feed in the winter time, or when the lambs were real young. And so they're coming over here looking for a handout. Daughter is finally starting to shed off, and she is trying to wean the lambs. They have lifted her off the ground in times past, literally. But Mama's over there on the right. Daughter's there feeding the 2 lambs, and they're bawling at me because they could smell some chicken feed that I was carrying back and forth earlier, and they thought it was for them. So with that, gang, I will wish you blessings for the day, and whatever you do, just keep chasing your dream.